Hello, everyone. My name is Christine, and I'm the host here at the Hungarian Heritage Podcast, the show where we connect your modern life to your Hungarian heritage by building bridges and connecting the circles of Hungarians around us. This podcast is a place where everyone is welcome, where you don't even need to be Hungarian or speak Hungarian to join in on the fun. Each week, we will talk about all the things that we love about Hungary and Hungarian people. So, if you're looking to make that first connection to your Hungarian heritage, or you're looking to dive deeper, then this is the place to be. Thanks for joining us today. On this episode of the Hungarian Heritage Podcast, I will be speaking with Marielle van Luijk, and she is a collector of authentic Hungarian folk costumes. We're going to talk about Marielle's Hungarian heritage, what inspired her at a young age about Hungarian folk clothing, when she started collecting, how her collection has grown, and how she continues to collect and showcase her pieces. Not to mention what she has in store for the future of her collection and her online folk clothing store. By the end of this episode, you will be inspired by Marielle's passion for the Hungarian heritage and its folk clothing, and you will also find out what type of influencer Marielle hopes to become. Welcome to this episode of the Hungarian Heritage Podcast, and I would like to welcome Marielle van Luijk. She is a collector of Hungarian folk costumes, and her efforts are focused on preserving the Hungarian heritage through clothing. Welcome, Marielle. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk about my passion about my collection to English-speaking audiences.
That's excellent. I'm sure everybody's excited to hear what you have to say as well. But before we get started talking about your collection and your passion for Hungarian clothing, tell us a little bit about your half Dutch, half Hungarian background, and what was your experience growing up with two very rich cultures?
So it's actually really interesting. As a kid, I always felt that I could connect more with my Hungarian ancestry. I was really proud of being Hungarian. My mother also really made sure that I was really in touch with my Hungarian side also. I was raised bilingual, so I spoke Hungarian from a really early age on, and she continued to speak with me in Hungarian until I was about 11 or 12 years. We would visit Hungary whenever we could. When there was like a big vacation, summer vacation. We also had like a May vacation actually in Holland. And then we would also go and in the winter. And there was also one time that I was in Hungary at Easter. And I don't know if you know about Hungarian Easter, but it's a big thing.
It's a very big thing for sure. Wow, what a great experience. I feel like your mom really made sure that you were connected to both of your cultures, which is fantastic. And you definitely grew up at a time where travel between Hungary and Holland was possible, unlike older generations. So let's jump in. How were you first inspired to start your Hungarian folk clothing collection? Was it just your idea, your family? How did that first happen for you?
I'm really proud to say this, but this was all my own. This was all on my own. So, as I've mentioned before, we would go in the May vacation to Hungary, but we wouldn't go there on vacation. But my mother had enlisted me to go to a Hungarian school in Dunajváros because my mother and my grandmother and a lot of my ancestors were born in Dunajváros. It was then called Stalinváros.
Right.
Changed to Dunajváros. It's right under Budapest. So if you go to the south, it's a 1.5 hour by car. And she would enroll me in a music school, in a music elementary school. That's where I would see the Hungarian culture with my own eyes. I don't know if you know, but in Hungary, folk dance is obligatory. So when you go to school, it's in the curriculum. It's like gymnastics.
Is it still in the curriculum today? Is that still part of it being taught? Wow.
Yes, it still is. And it made such a big impression on me. We would dance on traditional Hungarian melodies, and it just resonated with me. And I was like, oh my God, I love this so much. There is a picture of me in Hungarian full clothing because we had to prepare for, I think it was a performance. And I
Okay.
was so happy. It,
Oh,
it wasn't as beautiful as the costumes that I had now, but I was a child and I was so incredibly happy. And another memory that I have that is still with me until this day is that this Hungarian school had an exchange program with a German school. And
oh,
they would also come, I think, around May. And because they would come, they would also show them the best what Hungarian culture
of
could give.
course.
So they had mannequins with Hungarian folk costumes. And I remember that they had a folk costume from Kalocsa. That's the one with the
Sure.
big floral embroideries. And I remember that I was mesmerized by it. It was amazing. And they told me, yeah, it's a really expensive costume. And I don't know, I really loved it from the first moment that I saw it.
Wow, that's amazing. So that was like the birth of your passion from when you were younger. It
Yes,
just totally took over your brain and you're like, wow, I love this, right?
it did. When I saw these dancing boys, I was completely in love with them. I said, I want a Hungarian boyfriend.
Well, then with all the boot slapping and it's
Yeah,
definitely a lot of fun to watch. I imagine
I
it's a
think,
lot more fun to dance.
yeah, it's extremely manly, I think. It's
Yes.
incredibly masculine. I
Mhm.
really loved it.
Yeah,
I
wow.
still love it today.
Of course. I think your passion only keeps growing once you find what that is. So you collect Hungarian clothing because you want to preserve the heritage. Now, at what point, because you became aware of this passion when you were a child, essentially, at what point did you start collecting? And how did that transition into, wow, I'm a collector of Hungarian clothing now? So, how did that happen for you? Take us through that process.
Well, we would go back a little bit in time. We would go to Tihany at Lake
Yep.
Balaton,
Mm-hmm.
and it's also a very touristic spot. And I remember I was 15 or 16, and I really wanted an Hungarian blouse. And I remember that I tried on a tourist blouse, and I was
Yeah.
so happy, and I bought it. So that's what I could do then because
Right.
I was living in the Netherlands. I didn't live in Hungary, and yeah, that was it. And then we would go back a little bit further. Then I was 18, and I would have a part-time job, and I would finally have some money because that's also a big part. I didn't have the money and the supplies to buy the costumes. So I had this part-time job, and I could buy. There was like a website, just like the Americans have
Sure.
eBay. Uh,
Okay.
we have
Right.
also in Holland a big this used things website. And I remember I stumbled upon a big Hungarian heritage and I could buy it. And I was so happy. And
Wow.
that's when it started, I think, when I was
Yeah.
18 years old with this big collection. It was mostly ceramics and it wasn't Hungarian full clothing at all. But
Okay.
I was really happy. And from that day on, I would look every day on this particular website.
Wow. You knew you had the passion and you knew it was going to happen, but every collection starts somewhere. And
Yeah,
that's where your collection started. Wow,
yeah, it
wow,
does. And
wow.
after that, I really tried to also look in Hungary
Okay.
for these Hungarian folk costumes, but I didn't know where to start. So I went to Budapest. I went to the Váci Street. There's a
Mhm.
lot of
Sure.
antiques there. And I would go and ask the sellers, do you have some Hungarian folk costumes? And I said, no, we don't have it. They are extremely rare to get them. And I understand because there was kind of a heyday when they would sell these folk costumes. I actually even know a really nice old lady who would have a store there I think she started it in the 80s. And she would
Okay.
sell for 20 years the most terrific Hungarian costumes to even aristocracy,
Wow.
European nobility, because they would come there and they would buy it and they would really love it. And now it's really hard to get these
Right.
clothing pieces. So, but it didn't discourage me. I thought I will just have to look harder. And that's what I did.
So you're never really going to be finished looking because you're just going to keep adding to the collection, which is great. Let's talk about your collection. How many pieces do you have in your collection so far?
Oh my God. I don't even know. It's a lot. It really is a lot. I have never counted them. There was one time when I thought I would make an Excel spreadsheet and just write what I have because I couldn't track of it, but it's just too much. I have like a lot of underskirts, petticoats, necklaces, headpieces. It's a lot. I have never made like a list of what I have. I just know I have a full costume from this area. I know I have it from this area because I am always trying to make a set complete. I always try to buy like a whole full costume. So I always have like a goal. So I say, okay, I want to have a macho costume.
Okay.
So I will have to look for a top. I will have to look for a headscarf. And that's how I do it. So I rarely just buy pieces. Yeah, of course, if there's something that's really nice, I'm like, okay, I'll buy it. But now as I am really intensively collecting for almost since I moved to Hungary, I started collecting like crazy. It has grown exponentially, I can tell you. It's really crazy how much it has grown since I moved here because I had so much more opportunities to do so.
Sure.
And I said to myself, I have to organize it for myself. So I try to always look for something. And for some reason, it's really strange, but if you really want it and if you really look for it, it will just appear on your path. Because like 2 or 3 months ago, I said to myself, I want to complete my macho costume.
Okay.
Okay, not in the first week I found something, but actually the day before yesterday.
Wow, congratulations. That's great.
Yeah. I was in Mezőkövesd and I just found a top that I really needed to complete.
Well, I think you just were focused on it. And so it became more apparent to you when you were looking around for things. That's a question I was going to ask because like, do you specifically look for a style, similar to dance, clothing does vary from region to region. So it's interesting that you are trying to complete costumes from the different regions. So how many completed costumes from different regions do you have?
It's a really good question. I have tried to make it clear to myself what I want. And for me, it's clear I am not the kind of collector who wants to have a costume from each village.
Okay.
There are some villages that I resonate better with.
Okay.
So I'm not going to name, but there was a headpiece that I bought and I thought, okay, I'm going to search for the rest of the full costume. But when it ended up in my possession, I really started to dislike it and I eventually sold it. I just couldn't resonate with it.
Sure.
And a lot of people know that I have this preference for the costumes of Sárköz and Kocsa. And actually they are near Dunajváros.
Okay.
It's still 100 or 150 kilometers, but I think that's why I resonate better with them because they are close to where my ancestors are from.
Okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. So you have a connection to these costumes because it's personal for you.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's just they are very embellished there, and when I'm wearing them, I have to say I feel like royalty.
I agree. First of all, when everyone takes a look at your social media, these costumes are so ornate, colorful. They're gorgeous. I would almost be afraid to take one step in them because they're, like you said, they're royal looking. They're gorgeous. They're gorgeous. Are those costumes more of an everyday type of costume, or were the costumes on your social media like for a wedding outfit? Can you talk a little bit about the types of the costumes from that region?
Yeah, it's such a good question that you asked me this because for me, it's evident, but for a lot of people who are not familiar, they think, oh, it's just what they wore every day. And even Hungarians, they don't know it. Right. Because a lot of dance groups dance in these kind of full clothing or in this kind of full costumes. Well, my collection consists only of Sunday's best and only for the most wealthy families. So there were also like, how do you say, layers, or how do you say it? Like,
yeah, like layers of the costume.
No, I mean like not everybody was as rich.
Understood. Right. So each, layer of society, like maybe the more money that you had, the more ornate your costume compared to someone who, just lives in the village and goes about there every day.
Yeah, even within the village, there was a lot of difference, because when somebody had more land to grow their crops on, they would have more money. So what I have in my collection is from the kind of girls or women who would have a lot of money to buy costumes, because there were differences, and people who didn't have that much money, they were not even allowed to to dress in these costumes. There was a really strict rules within the society where they were regulated by the community.
Wow, that's really interesting. I had no idea that was a thing. I feel like in fashion and anywhere in the world, the more money you have, the better or more expensive name brand things you can buy, as you see all over social media. But it's interesting to know that in cultures in the past, that was also a thing.
I always say we humans, I think we don't really evolve. We stay the same.
Yeah, so many similarities to today that you can compare to 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 300 years ago, and more.
Yes.
Yeah, it's funny, human nature, right? It's really...
Yes, it is. So if I would appear in, I would say, a Sárköz costume from a special kind, which was made from a special kind of fabric that was imported from France, you could say it's the equivalent of a Chanel tweed costume. I would say it's absolutely the same. Wow. They didn't have the logo, but they knew this costume would cost as much as one cow, which was
a lot of money back in the day.
It was.
Wow, that's something that I never knew. I love to learn new things, and that's pretty interesting. At what point do you feel society transition from wearing these costumes for their wedding? I'm just so curious, because I know when my grandmother got married in 1946, she didn't bring over a wedding picture. And I'm just so curious to think of like what it would have looked like in 1946, or were they wearing costumes similar to this during that time period, or was it further back in time?
Actually, after the Second World War, everything changed. There was a big turning point. Already in some villages, after the First World War, they would wear what the townspeople wore.
Just like everyday clothing, more...
Well, they thought it was more progressive. The village people always looked up to the town people.
Sure.
And they aspired to be them. So they also wanted to wear what the town people wore. So they abandoned costumes. And it was also more, I would say, efficient to wear like modern clothing, because industrialization also became more apparent after Second World War. And they couldn't work in their clothing that they had.
Sure. It makes a lot of sense. But that's an interesting point, because I wasn't sure. I'm sure she had described her dress to me, but she said the reason that she didn't bring a picture, because they came with very little. She said that she didn't like how her sister did her hair. So typical girls, right? Typical siblings. So do you have a favorite piece, a favorite complete outfit, or is it just too hard to decide?
Yeah, I actually had that question already asked to me when I put it in my stories, and I always say, I like all my Sárköz costumes, and that's true. But in fact, I just cannot choose. I love them all equally, and every complete costume that I have and I keep, they are really close to my heart.
Wow.
And if I don't, then I will learn to grow to love it, because there was a time I didn't really like the sióolgát costume. Actually, I have done a photo shoot with these type of costumes, And I started to love it. So it's hard to decide because they are all really close to me, because there's a lot of work that has put into them. I had to collect all these pieces. I have talked to a lot of women in these villages. I don't know if you have seen the post about the Shiogart costume. The lady who made my petticoats, she was really old and she actually passed away before I could thank her in person. So I have these personal things that are attached to every costume. So they are very dear to me. It's really hard to choose.
Yeah. Well, there's such a history with each piece. Yeah. So it's just like, they're like your family members essentially, or like your children.
Yes.
Like they're all unique. They all have their own personalities. Some days, some of them get on your nerves a little bit more than others, right? But they're still dear to your heart. And what a connection, especially because you collect maybe the blouse from one woman and a skirt from another woman and the petticoat. And when you put them all together, it's like an entire story of history in one outfit, which is really cool, really, really amazing.
Yeah, it is. When I put an ensemble together, it's I feel such a success. It was great to have finally put something together. And just as you told me, yes, sadly, I cannot buy from a lot of people in the villages because most of that is already sold or they don't want to sell it. So I buy from a lot of people who sell, like resellers.
Like a vintage shop or an antique?
No, it's not even antique shops. It's like resellers. I buy a lot from resellers, and there's not a personal history attached to it. If I would go in the village, for example, they would tell me, oh, this was made by my mom and this was worn by me for my wedding. So yeah, that's a little bit something that I don't really like now, but I was actually born too late to go into the villages and collect the folk clothing.
Well, I don't think you were born too late, because I think what you're doing is perfect, because now you're preserving the Hungarian heritage through these clothing. So you're the right person at the right time. And I'm sure there's so many more pieces out there that you just haven't discovered. Sometimes people don't sell their items until maybe an older family member unfortunately passes away and they have it in their home. And so I'm sure there's a lot of opportunities that you will continue to find.
There is, and actually I've had some people reach out to me in the last couple of days who know that when they will sell something to me, it will be in a good place. I will store it and I can really acknowledge it. So they would like to sell it to me instead of resellers.
That's perfect. It's nice that you're getting your name out there as someone who definitely preserves, but also cares and has an interested passion about it, not just a reseller who's going to sell it to somebody, that it doesn't really care as much about it. You mentioned that you store them. Is there a specific way that you store them to help in the preservation of the costumes?
I'm still really new to this, but I have an amazing friend, Jan Letowski, who is known on Instagram as Ellis Island Vintage. He is a big collector, and he actually taught me a thing or two how to store. But when I go to the villages, because I always go to the villages when we're going to dress up, I always ask them, how should I store this? How should I store that? Because I have to know how they did it. Because for me, it's not evident. There are some components of a blouse that should not be folded. So with each village, there's a lot of different storage tips and tricks. So I always ask them to show me how to store them.
But that's really good, because you're getting it from the person that's selling it to you. So they're giving you the accurate information of how it was stored. And clearly the pieces are gorgeous and the color has remained so intact. So they were clearly doing something right for these years with these costumes.
They were actually, they really wanted to preserve them, because they also had in mind, I have to give this to my daughter or to my granddaughter. I actually heard a really funny story that's still with me until this day, that I already told you that these costumes were only worn on Sundays, not even for dance. They didn't dance. in them.
Okay.
And they didn't go to work in it, of course. But I heard that there was a girl in the 1930s who had a pair of red boots.
Ooh.
And she would go to Sunday Mass, and she would not put on the boots when she was walking to the church, but she would put them on in church. So she would not wear them just to show it, because of course Sunday, I think, was the only day to show how beautiful you were, because you had to attract a man, and she wanted them to preserve them, to keep them. So she didn't wear them. And that's so nice, I think. And that's what I'm also doing, because a lot of people ask me, yeah, do you wear this in daily life? And how do you combine it? And actually, Jan Latowski also had a post about this, that I don't know if you have seen the Marilyn Monroe dress controversy.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, it's really sad. And the same goes for me. I am only wearing these pieces when we make the picture. I don't sit in them. I always wear undergarments, so not to sweat in the pieces. I walk around, we make the picture, and I take them off. I don't wear these in daily life, because when I would wear these in daily life, they would not exist in another 100 years.
Sure, absolutely. They are museum quality pieces. And,
They are.
Even if you watch in movies, you see when people look at documents, they wear gloves when they touch the paper. So
Yes.
Do you need help putting these clothing pieces on? Because they're
Yes,
big. They're big.
course.
Yeah.
Of course. Yes, I need help, because it's better when somebody helps. And of course, I cannot dress myself. Also, in the olden days, girls were dressed by their mothers or by their mother-in-laws, because they would see how something would look correctly on them. It's really hard to see when you are dressing yourself if it looks correctly. So yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, I would need it, because then I could preserve the costume better.
Right.
Because it's now summer and I'm also sweating a little bit. So sometimes when I'm taking on a dress or something, or a bodice, it gets a little bit stuck. So I need the help.
Right. Absolutely. Well, there's just a lot to the dresses too. You want to make sure that it stays perfect while you're displaying it in a picture.
Yes.
Yeah, that's amazing. So do the people helping you get dressed, do they wear gloves also to preserve the clothing, or do anything special? No. In 30 years, they will need to, though, right?
For them, it's part of their heritage, part of their culture. They would have seen their grandmothers wearing it. For them, it's not a museum piece. For them, it's a living tradition.
Oh, that's a great point. It is a living tradition. Your clothing collection is a living tradition. I know I saw on your social media, you posted about the petticoats. Oh my goodness, how much fabric is underneath these to really make the dress look the way the dress is supposed to look. It has to be meters and meters of fabric.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the petticoats, because that was pretty amazing.
Yeah, there was a time that I didn't collect petticoats because they are stiffened. You might have seen the ones that I was wearing for the remotes for Horlocker. Yes. I think there's maybe 5 or 6 meters. Wow. And they are stiffened and they have these huge bulks. And when I was still living in the Netherlands, I just couldn't bring them with me. So I didn't buy them because I just didn't have a way to like bring them with me. But when I moved to Hungary, I could go and we would bring them in a car. And yes, when I was trying to think how to dress up, there was a time that I didn't think about these petticoats. I even posted a picture of me wearing a Kolocha costume. I think it was 7 years ago and now, and how my perception has changed. Really, the petticoats give the form of the dress. They are the basic element. If I don't wear the petticoat, it just looks flat. It doesn't look good.
Right. I feel like the petticoat puts it in its most authentic form of the dress, of I guess how it was worn originally.
Yes. The Hungarian folk clothing was made to put an emphasis on the butt and on the hips.
Yes.
Small waist and also small cleavage, because big cleavage was not really something that they would aim for, but they like to see if a girl had big hips and big butt, be sufficient for childbearing. And that's what these petticoats will give. And also, I think there was also some kind of thing going on that the more petticoats you had, the more rich you were.
I think I've heard that about other cultures, probably, through growing up in school. Like the bigger your clothes, the more money you had, which I guess is true.
And, it's almost like they were imitating royal court dresses. It's like wearing a crinoline.
Yes.
It's always, you see that what was worn in the towns or what was worn at court, it always translates, and this fashion always goes to the villages also, but like 30 or 40 years later. I also mentioned that there was some fabric coming from France.
Yes.
And that was actually used by the nobility in the 1870s, 1880s. And then you can see the same fabric used in Hungary in the 1920s.
Wow, that's really cool. I think that works in fashion that way now, too. I'm not sure if you ever saw the movie The Devil Wears Prada, I believe the movie is. And there's one scene where one of the main characters tells the other character that, what we decide here with the expensive clothes trickles down to everyday clothing. So I guess that holds true everywhere, even in historical clothing as well.
Yes, but nowadays it's a much faster pace with fast fashion.
Oh, sure.
And then it was, they needed like decades.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But it's interesting, like you said before, human nature really hasn't changed too much over time.
I think so. I absolutely think so. We always think that we have evolved and we got better, but I don't think we have.
I think it's just different, not better, just different. And technology is better, but that's about it. Everything else with human nature stays pretty much the same, I think. You also are a trained violinist, which is pretty amazing. So do you ever connect, your Hungarian clothing collection with violin playing? Do you want to tell us anything about that?
Yes. For some strange reason, when I moved to Hungary 3 years ago, I had a lot of gigs and I had a lot of performances. But after I went to university, I also studied classical violin again in Hungary because I studied in the Netherlands. I got my bachelor's degree, but they didn't accept the bachelor degree, and I had to go again and study again at the Conservatory of Debrecen. For some reason, they kind of forgot about me, town where I live. So nowadays, I don't have much gigs anymore. And the people who know me from before, they also told me, well, we don't see that much of you on your Instagram that you're playing violin. So I'm at the point now that I don't really know whether I should continue with playing violin or making my Instagram page bigger with these costumes. I was also thinking of uploading a video of me playing violin, but maybe not folk music, because my preference since I was a little girl, when I was 7, I started violin playing, and my violin teacher would always give me classical music, which would have Hungarian folk elements in it. So yes, maybe in the future, I am thinking about posting videos about me playing Hungarian classical music with folklore elements in it. Maybe I will wear one Hungarian little blouse or something, but I would only wear those kind of items that were not used like 100 years ago. 2 days ago, I posted about a little bolero that I have bought. The women in Kalocha, they also tried to make their embroideries to be worn for everyday fashion. So I would say, yes, I would like to wear Hungarian-inspired clothing instead of the real deal.
Well, I think that's smart, because you don't want to ruin the authentic folk clothing. Hungarian-inspired clothing would work perfectly. And it's awesome that you have two passions.
Yes.
You can have both passions. You can connect them or keep them separate. But that's pretty amazing that you have both of those passions. And my feeling is you just go for it. Whatever makes you happy and whatever works. So Marielle, tell us about your business account. Tell us all about that.
So, as I have mentioned before, I came into contact with this woman who had an antique shop in the Váci utca in Budapest.
Okay.
And she still had a lot of items that she did not sell. And she told me, well, maybe you should try and sell them. And that's how I rolled into this business. So I have my own folklore shop with authentic folklore pieces, and I mainly sell Romanian folk clothing.
Okay.
They are linen, they are very sturdy, and I actually think that those are more suitable to wear because I have a lot of Japanese American clients also.
Okay.
And Japanese, Chinese, American, Australian clients who like to wear these for every day. And I think they're more suitable to wear. They're sturdy, they can take it.
So these pieces, are you aware of like where they come from? Do you have like a little bit of like a history when someone decides to buy a piece? Do you say, oh, this is from, I don't know, Heves County, like, or a village there?
Yes, I'm not entirely familiar with all of the Romanian villages, but I know some villages, and I have some Romanian followers who are gladly helping me with deciphering where a blouse is from. But I have some blouses that were once part of the Hungarian big empire in 1920.
Sure.
And most of the ones that I can get my hands on are from there.
Right. For people that don't know this, which many people do not, there's a big Hungarian community in Romania when the empire was bigger. And so there are still lots of Hungarians in Romania, which is the people I imagine that are helping you with these clothing research and finding out where the blouses are from. So that's pretty interesting. So for those who didn't know, there's definitely a big area of Hungarians that even still speak Hungarian today.
Yes, it was also for me a shock, actually, because I didn't know about it. Growing up in the Netherlands, I didn't learn about it. And I live really close to the Romanian border, well, actually Transylvanian border.
Okay.
That's a better term. They call it Partium, I think, this area. And we go a lot to Kalataszeg or Cluj. It's in the neighborhood of Kolozsvár or Cluj-Napoca. And that's where a lot of the most costumes are from that are really, really popular. Those are the costumes with the rows of beads. The beaded Hungarian costumes are from there. But I'm more focused on the Romanian sides.
That's excellent. So not only do you collect and preserve, you also have, your shop as well. I feel like your passion is exploding, and I imagine that in the next 5 years, you're going to be so big.
I really hope. I would like that people would take me serious. I really want to make a name. I really want to be somebody in the folklore community because there's a really big folklore community in Hungary.
Yeah.
And for some reason with violin, I just couldn't make it. But I feel that with the Hungarian folk clothing collection that I have, I feel that I've connected with a lot of people in this 3 years and that they are taking me already more seriously. So that's really important for me.
Sure, absolutely.
Somebody.
Yeah, well, I feel like you already are somebody in that community because your passion, your collection, and it's just going to keep growing for you. And I'm really happy for you that, you're able to use your passion for your life's work because makes your life so much more beautiful on a daily basis when you can do something that you're passionate about. And then it doesn't feel like work.
No, it doesn't. I really look forward every time when we have this photo session or photo shoot. It takes weeks. It takes days to prepare. But I love every second.
I'm excited to check out your business account and see if there's any pieces that I'd like to purchase. Do you sell overseas as well, or just in Europe? You do? Perfect.
Yeah. Because
that's great.
I these American customers, they are from there. I actually shipped to Australia, and I was really afraid they wouldn't arrive. But now I'm also more accustomed now to UPS and FedEx and these kind of shipping companies. So I'm learning and growing also.
Well, I think that's what every business does. You learn and grow at the same time. what future plans that you have or you're dreaming up of how you would like to show people your collection? Because I'm sure your collection is definitely museum worthy because they're so authentic. How do you plan to show people?
I would really like to grow on Instagram. That's for sure. I would like to call myself as a folkfluencer.
Oh, I love that. A folkfluencer. I think you just own that term now. I'm going to say that's how I'm going to introduce you, the folkfluencer. I love it. Love it.
Thank you. Because Instagram is really connecting people from all around the world. I don't really want to focus only on Hungarian people. I want to focus on a lot of people. I want to share Hungarian culture. So yes, it would be nice to maybe have an exhibition in Hungary. I already had one actually 3 years ago. I have grown so much, so I would need, of course, one more. And I also would like to show some street style. So what I told you about, so these Hungarian folklore-inspired items, I would like to combine with normal street style and show how you can look nice and how you can pay an homage to your own heritage.
I love that. Wow, that's amazing. I think you definitely have a lot of things that are going to happen for you in your collection because, your efforts to preserve the folk costumes of the Hungarian heritage, it's so important because like you said, you said you were born too late, but it's just because people have been selling them off. So once the supply runs out, it's gone and you can only make copies, but your efforts are really an important part of preserving the culture, especially because they are authentic. And I definitely see you presenting these online, in person. And I think a lot of people will be very interested in seeing your collection in person all at one time, in addition to on your social media. Thank you for being here today and sharing a very important part of the Hungarian heritage, your preservation efforts. You are the folkfluencer that we were all looking for. And I think you should definitely put that on your Instagram. Tell us how people can find you on social media.
They can find me on Holland Marci, Holland MARCSI. And my business account is Folkloric Fashion. And I have an Etsy shop.
Okay. Is it called Folkloric Fashion on Etsy?
And on Instagram.
Obviously, I will put all of that information in the show notes so people don't have to frantically write it down right now. And we will definitely get people to go to those sites to check out your amazing Hungarian heritage folkloric clothing. It's beautiful. I can't wait to see them in person when I visit Hungary and visit you. Thank you for keeping the culture alive, because I think to keep a culture alive, you have to be mindful of the past, and you're helping people do that. Thank you so much, Marielle.
Thank you for having me here. It was nice talking to you.
Same here.
Thanks for joining me today on this episode of the Hungarian Heritage Podcast. Don't forget to check the show notes for information about this episode and how you can connect with Marielle van Luijk, the folkfluencer, on all of her social media sites so that you can stay updated about her Hungarian folk costume collection. And make sure you check out Marielle's online store, Folkloric Fashion, because there may be a folk costume piece that you've been looking for to add to your collection or to even wear around town. Thanks to my audio editor, Tori Irvin, for working her audio magic on this episode. Our theme music is Hungarian Dance by Pony Music, used with a special license from Envato Market. Thanks again for listening, and don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts so we can continue to connect our modern lives with our Hungarian heritage. Until next time, goodbye everyone. Sziasztok mindenkinek!